I sat by the floor-to-ceiling window of my downtown apartment, the city lights flickering like tiny promises below me. My silk blouse felt impossibly soft against my skin, but the warmth it gave couldn't erase the sudden tightness in my chest. My phone buzzed again, another text from my sister. I ignored it, taking a slow sip of coffee, letting the bittersweet taste anchor me in this quiet moment before the storm. It's funny, I thought, how life has a way of circling back. I'm sitting here, calm, composed, with my company finally profitable, my name quietly respected in circles that matter. And yet, there's a little tug at the edge of my smile, a memory I can't shake. The memory of Dad laughing at me, the day I couldn't afford Mom's birthday gift. I can still hear it, deep, rolling, dismissive. My heart had felt like it was breaking in real time, and I promised myself then that I would never feel that small again. The buzz of my phone broke my thoughts again. This time it wasn't my sister, it was her husband. I stared at his name lighting up the screen. A part of me stiffened, wary, but another part, the part that remembers every underestimated promise I've made to myself, couldn't help but feel the irony. The irony that someone I hadn't expected, someone tied to that family moment of judgment, might be about to acknowledge something I had spent years building in silence. I rested my hand on the table, fingers brushing the smooth surface, and whispered under my breath, "Let's see if they recognize the woman I've become." I remember that day like it happened yesterday, even though it was years ago. I was 22, living in a tiny studio apartment across town, scrimping and saving every penny from my first real job. Mom's birthday was approaching, and I had spent weeks planning something meaningful, something that would show her how much I loved her. But when I finally gathered the courage to tell Dad I couldn't afford the gift I'd imagined, his laughter cut sharper than any word I'd ever heard. "You can't even get Mom a decent gift?" he sneered, shaking his head. Typical. I felt my chest tighten, a lump forming in my throat. My hands trembled as I clutched the tiny, half-baked gift I had managed to afford, a hand-painted frame I had spent nights working on. I tried to explain, my voice breaking, but he waved me off, dismissive. Mom's smile, that gentle curve of sympathy, barely reached her eyes. I could feel my sister smirking from the corner of the room, her husband at the time just nodding along, silent but judgmental. I sank into the couch, holding back tears, my pride stinging more than embarrassment. I wanted to scream, to prove I wasn't worthless, that I could create something meaningful even with nothing. That night, alone, I opened a small leather notebook my grandmother had given me years before, a notebook she said was for dreams, not excuses. I ran my fingers over its worn edges, feeling the weight of her words. "You are stronger than you think and richer than your circumstances. Never let anyone else define your worth." That tiny, fragile book became my compass. I made a decision then, the kind of decision that feels terrifying at first because it's yours alone. I would not rely on anyone else's approval. I would build my life, earn my independence, and never again let my value be dictated by someone else's laughter. The sting of Dad's amusement and my sister's quiet judgment lingered like a shadow, but for the first time, I felt a spark, a stubborn flicker of determination that refused to die. I whispered to myself, clutching the notebook to my chest, "This is the moment I begin. I will rise, and they will see me differently one day." After that night with my grandmother's notebook clutched against my chest, I threw myself into building a life that no one in my family could anticipate. I took odd jobs at first, freelance writing, marketing gigs, anything that paid, and every dollar I earned felt like a small rebellion against the laughter and doubt I had carried for so long. I spent nights hunched over my laptop, the hum of the city outside my tiny apartment a constant reminder that life was moving forward, even if my family didn't believe I could. Then came Ms. Caldwell, a senior executive at a small, growing marketing firm. She noticed me during a networking event. My quiet persistence, my meticulous attention to detail, the ideas I presented with careful confidence. She became my mentor, challenging me to think bigger, push harder, and demand more from myself. "You're capable of more than you imagine," she said one afternoon as we reviewed a campaign. "Don't let anyone, not even family, tell you otherwise." Her words burned into me like a mantra. The early years were brutal. I worked 12-14-hour days, juggling clients who doubted my youth and gender. I fought imposter syndrome constantly, wondering if I deserved the progress I was slowly achieving. There were nights I cried on the floor of my apartment, exhausted, lonely, unsure if the sacrifices would ever pay off. But every morning, I returned to my desk, to my plans, to my dream of independence. Then came my first major breakthrough, a contract with a startup that trusted me to revamp their entire marketing strategy. The first time I saw the profits hit the account, a rush of vindication mixed with disbelief coursed through me. I allowed myself a tiny smile, then immediately turned my focus to the next challenge. Step by step, client by client, I built a portfolio, a reputation, and eventually my own firm. But I kept it all secret. I posted modest updates on social media, careful never to reveal the scale of my success. My family assumed I was scraping by, surviving, just like I had told them during those early, humbling years. Only a few close friends knew the real story, and even they saw only fragments of the empire I was quietly building. Every milestone was sweeter because it was mine alone. I had taken the sting of my father's laughter and my sister's judgment and transformed it into fuel. Every office I rented, every contract I signed, every accolade I earned was a quiet but powerful testament. I had survived, I had risen, and I had done it on my terms. And yet, even as I thrived, there remained a shadow of anticipation, a question lingering in my mind. When will they finally see me for who I really am? And what will happen when they do? The knock on my office door echoed through the sleek space, and I straightened, smoothing the silk blouse I wore with effortless confidence. I wasn't expecting anyone, at least not from my family. Yet there they were, my sister, her husband, and, to my quiet dismay, my father. Their expressions were a mix of curiosity, disbelief, and unspoken judgment, as if stepping into my office might somehow confirm or shatter the assumptions they had carried about me for years. The office itself was a testament to the life I had quietly built, floor-to-ceiling windows framing the city skyline, abstract art that I had collected over the years, a polished mahogany desk scattered with carefully curated awards and contracts, and a sleek laptop humming quietly with the pulse of my thriving business. The faint scent of fresh orchids mingled with the aroma of the coffee I had prepared moments earlier, a subtle signal that I lived in a world far removed from the cramped apartment and small jobs of my past. I let them take it all in before I spoke. My father's eyes flicked around, lingering on the framed certificates, the glossy magazine features, and finally on me. He opened his mouth, probably to offer some sarcastic remark, but no words came. My sister's husband raised his eyebrows, shifting uncomfortably, while my sister herself looked almost ashamed, her lips pressed tightly together. I smiled, letting the silence stretch, tasting the irony. "You've all seen The Office, the city view, the awards," I began softly. "What you haven't seen is the journey it took to get here. The nights I cried alone, the endless work, the moments of doubt when I wasn't sure I'd survive. But I did. And I did it without your approval, or your belief that I could." My father shifted in his seat, the color draining from his face. My sister looked down, biting her lip, and her husband leaned forward slightly, eyes widening. I continued, letting each word land like carefully aimed bricks. "I run my own company. I have multiple clients across the country, and I manage a team of talented professionals who trust me and my vision. My net worth, well, let's just say I don't need anyone's pity anymore." Her husband finally spoke, his voice a mix of astonishment and admiration. "Wait, you're the boss?" I leaned back in my chair, a small, satisfied smile playing on my lips. "Yes, I'm the boss. The one you underestimated. The one you laughed at. And the one who proved that sometimes being invisible is the best way to rise without interference." The room was thick with tension. My father's jaw tightened. I could see the shame crawling across his face. My sister's eyes glistened, and her husband's expression had shifted entirely, no longer judgmental, but respectful, almost reverent. They had walked in expecting to see the struggling, timid woman they had always underestimated. Instead, they found someone unrecognizable in her confidence, her independence, and her quiet power. I paused, letting them absorb the reality, letting the irony of the moment hang in the air. For years, they had seen only the girl who couldn't buy a simple birthday gift. Now, they were staring at the woman who had built an empire from nothing, quietly, without fanfare, and entirely on her own terms. The tension in the room hung thick, but I could feel the balance shift. For the first time in years, I held the upper hand, not just in finances, but in respect, influence, and clarity of purpose. I watched my father, still stiff in the chair, and my sister, whose eyes darted between shame and hope. Her husband, now fully aware of the reality, leaned forward, almost reverently, awaiting my words. I took a slow breath and let it out deliberately. "I've built this life on my terms," I said, my voice calm but firm. "And while I am not here to punish anyone, I am here to make one thing clear. If any of you want to be part of my life, it will be on certain conditions. Not out of revenge, but out of necessity, for your growth and mine." I looked at my father first. "Dad, respect is not optional. If you want a place in my life, you will treat my achievements and my choices with the dignity they deserve. No more laughter, no more judgment. You will acknowledge that your words once hurt, and you will commit to supporting, not undermining, the people you claim to love." My sister shifted uneasily. "And you?" I asked, turning to her. "I will support your dreams, but only if you stop relying on excuses and begin taking responsibility for your own path. This means no more comparisons, no more putting yourself in a shadow. You have talent, use it. Step into it." Finally, her husband. He met my gaze, now respectful, almost earnest. "If you wish to remain close, you will honor the boundaries I've had to fight for in silence. Support your family, yes, but do so with integrity, not entitlement. Help where you can, but recognize that I am not here for approval or to be measured against the past." The room was quiet, the weight of my words settling in like the echo of a verdict. I could see the understanding beginning to dawn in their eyes, the realization that my power was not just financial, but emotional, grounded in self-respect and unwavering clarity. I softened slightly, letting a hint of warmth slip through. "I care about each of you," I said, "but I will not compromise the woman I've fought to become. If you are willing to grow, to rise alongside me instead of holding me back, then we have a chance at rebuilding this family in a way that honors all of us." Their expressions shifted slowly, acknowledgement, acceptance, and even a flicker of hope replacing the initial disbelief. For the first time, I felt the space between us realigning, not with fear, resentment, or guilt, but with mutual respect. I leaned back in my chair, letting the weight of the moment sink in. The girl who once trembled, who couldn't afford a birthday gift, now dictated the terms. And in doing so, she created not just boundaries but a blueprint for a family and a life that could finally thrive. Weeks passed, and I began to see subtle changes. My father called, hesitating at first, but his voice was softer, more respectful. He asked questions about my work, genuinely curious rather than judgmental. My sister started taking small steps toward her own goals, enrolling in courses she had always talked about, volunteering for projects she had previously shied away from. Her husband offered steady encouragement, no longer condescending or distant, but present in a way that felt balanced and sincere. I watched these transformations quietly, feeling a mix of pride and relief. It wasn't instant. It never is, but every small effort, every moment of accountability, was a testament to the fact that growth, when approached with honesty and boundaries, was possible. One evening, as I sat in my office surrounded by the skyline that had once seemed so unreachable, I opened the leather notebook my grandmother had given me. Its worn edges and faded pages reminded me of the night I decided to take control of my life. I traced the words she had written. "You are stronger than you think, and richer than your circumstances. Never let anyone else define your worth." I smiled, realizing how literal and profound that truth had become. The office was quiet, the hum of the city a comforting backdrop. I leaned back in my chair, reflecting on the journey, the laughter that had cut, the tears that had fallen, the long nights and small victories. I had transformed pain into purpose, doubt into determination, and secrecy into undeniable success. I was no longer the girl who trembled over a small birthday gift. I was a woman who commanded respect, shaped her destiny, and inspired growth in others, not out of obligation, but out of example. I whispered to myself, a soft, confident affirmation. I am enough. I am worthy. I am the boss of my life. And for the first time in years, the weight of judgment no longer pressed on me. I had created a life that honored my strength, my resilience, and my vision. The people I loved were learning, slowly but surely, to meet me there, not where I had been, but where I had risen. In that moment, I understood something vital. Power was not about revenge. It was about grace, clarity, and the courage to define one's own worth. And with that clarity, I smiled, knowing I had finally come home, not to a place, but to myself.